right. Yo, what is up, everyone? I'm actually going to go ahead and move this over here. This is a tutorial on using Simpler and Sampler. I'm putting this one off for a little while because I had to do a little bit of prep work for it. I'm going to try and make this one really short and sweet because up next, I'm going to record and put out my more complex sound design series. It's going to probably be like 4 or 5 separate videos. I'm really excited to get jumping on that, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this one. Just give you the basics on Simpler and Sampler, how to use them, how to do some cool stuff. First off, I got a couple instances of Simpler loaded up here. I got this just guitar pluck right here. Let's see. It just sounds like pretty basic, right? So off the bat, we're going to start in Simpler, by the way. If you have Ableton Standard, you're only going to have Simpler. If you have Suite, then you're going to have Simpler and Sampler. This is a great tool for anything from chopping up vocal loops or drum loops or melody loops to just taking single hits or pieces of a loop or any kind of sample and making a playable instrument out of it. So lots of cool stuff you can do with this. I'm not going to get into some of the more complicated routing today with like zone controls in Sampler. You can't really do it in Simpler. But in a future video, perhaps like showing you how to make your own like expressive multi-sample instrument, might get into that. For today, I just want to keep this like probably around 10 or 15 minutes. Yeah, so without further ado, let's just dive right in. All right, let me get this going here. So this is an instance of Simpler. Like I said, I have this C note from a guitar pluck in here, or a guitar string hit. Something to note with these, when you bring in any sample, off the bat, it's going to be linked to C on your keyboard. In other words, if I brought in a guitar pluck that was of the E string, if I drag it in, by default, when I play my C note, it's going to play that sample exactly how it is. So it's going to play an E note. So the first thing that you want to do when you drag a sample into here, and by the way, we can just, you know, let me actually just pull something in here. Jazz guitar. All right, so I got all these like, you know. So if I pull in like an E flat, you just drag it right into the box right here. Perfect. And by the way, if you do have, let's do this. If you have, if you're currently selected, have your, you know, selection on a MIDI track and you just double click one of these, it's going to automatically just fill it in to Simpler, or it'll load up a Simpler or a Sampler, depending on how your preferences are set, and just load up the sample in that. So if I pull in this E flat note, and I play just a C on my keyboard. Oh, sorry, we're on the wrong one now. So let me pull that here. And I play a C. Here, I'm going to pull up a tuner so you can see as well. And I play a C note. It's going to play the D sharp, which is, you know, the same as E flat. Go back here. Jazz guitar. So this is important because when you pull something in, the first thing you want to do is line it up to your actual keyboard. So Simpler and Sampler have two different ways to do this. Since we're in Simpler now, you want to navigate over to your, let's see, where is it? Controls. I'm going to go ahead and guess. Yep, controls. Transposition right here, transpose. And you want to bring it down so that that sample is now actually a C. So in this case, like I have a D sharp E note. You want to find where that note is on your keyboard. So that's, you know, D sharp, E flat, and go down 1, 2, 3. So go down to D, C sharp, C in this case. So I want to transpose it down 3 semitones. 1, 2, 3. All right. And now when I play a C, I get a C note. So that's the first thing you want to do. Once you have that down, you can just play it on your keyboard. All the notes will be lined up. So getting into this, off the bat here, let me move this over a little bit. You'll notice that there's 3 modes: classic, one shot, slice. Classic mode means that When you play a key, it's going to play the sample. When you take your finger off the key, it's going to not play the sample anymore. So I'm going to take my finger off. One shot means that you're going to hit a key. It's going to play it all the way through. So in Classic, if you go into the controls, by the way, you can, this is amplitude envelope. And where's pitch envelope? Go back to pitch. So we have amplitude envelope, pitch. So classic mode is going to actually, sorry, I kind of misspoke for it. Classic mode is going to default to whatever you have in your envelope settings here. So in this case, we have like a 0 attack, what is it, 50, probably if I had to guess, like a, yeah, release time down here. So it's gonna, you also have all those controls right here. So if you don't want to navigate to the controls, but if you want a more visual setup, then you have this here. So off the bat, you have like a 50-second release time. So in classic mode, that's what you're going to get. You get 0 attack and 50 millisecond release time. Now, if I pull this out to like, let's say like a second, and I hit it, and I let go, you can see that that release is going to kick in 832 millisecond release time. You can also bring this down too. So you have a lot of like envelope shaping tools at your disposal here. If I want it to kind of come in a little gentler. So it'll just follow that envelope, which if you've been following these tutorials, you get envelopes at this point. Pitch, you have all your pitch controls here. Off the bat, if I had to guess, it's going to be on, let's see, pitch envelope 0. So if you want to pull this up to like an octave or something, pull up the attack, pull this guy out, pull the sustain at 0 if you want it to just end at the key that you're in. So anyway, and for the record, for certain things like pitch envelope shaping, things like that, I actually prefer sampler. So if you do have sampler, you might want to do more like sound sculpting in sampler. You get a bit more additional controls there. However, sampler is still a great tool for a lot of different things, and it can be a lot quicker in some ways and can do some things that sampler can't. So back to, actually, let me stick in the controls for a second. Pretty simple stuff here. You got your filter, which you can just turn off with this button. You can choose the slope as always. You can choose what kind of band you want, notch or band or high pass, low pass, high pass, or morph, and then you get your morph tool as well. So this is just the same as an Ableton stock filter. You have your envelope here. All this stuff works the same way as it does in Operator or any other native Ableton tool. Don't forget to crank your amount up if you want the envelope to actually have an impact. Put that back to 0. So if you want, like, let's see, turn this on, pull this out. Let's bring all that down. So pull my amplitude envelope back to the default here. And the filter. So again, remember with the filter, and you go back to frequency versus envelope. Frequency, the filter only is going to open as much as it can. So right now it's like pretty far open. You know, the frequencies are really in this range, which is all right here anyway. So in order to have any effect, you really have to bring this back so that it has room to open. And in this case, I bet we have a very quick decay. Yeah, so let's pull this out a little bit. Oh, and the amount, again, crank that up. So now you get kind of a nice little wah effect. So that's kind of cool. Anyway, I'm going to turn off the filter envelope, and that'll just disable that. It'll revert to whatever the filter is doing, which is, again, pretty low, pretty closed. So, but for now, I'm just going to keep this off anyway. Oh, and again, with any Ableton filter, don't forget that you have OSR mode in here, which will give you the ability to add some drive. In this case, I'm not actually seeing where the drive would be. So in this case, in this particular one, in Simpler's filter, you may not actually have the chance to increase the drive with OSR like you do in other Ableton stock stuff. But, you know, if you still want that, you obviously have just the stock Ableton filter you can throw on there. So I'm going to turn this off for now. And here you have just like one LFO that you can assign to a couple different things. So the LFO by default is on. However, it's all 0% amount. So it's not going to do anything off the bat. But if you want to give it like a little, tremolo in the pitch, you can do something like this. And put this up. So that's kind of cool. You have a little volume envelope. You want to do that, put that back down. To get like a little like vibrato, or is that tremolo? I honestly, I don't ever remember what the difference is between tremolo and vibrato. One is pitch, one is volume or filter. So cool. And then of course you have a filter. However, this is grayed out right now because our filter is off. So if we put that back down, pull this over here, you can get a nice little filter envelope as well. So you can definitely do some cool stuff with that. And don't forget that you have free rate, which is hertz, and you have your BPM sync rate as well. So if I want like a nice quarter note, so and then you have, dotted stuff like 5/16, 3/16, and you have triplets as well and all that good stuff. So the LFO has an attack. It doesn't have a decay or anything like that. That is kind of a bummer, but an attack can still do some cool stuff. So if you have, let's go back to hertz for a second, you have something like this. It'll start off, you have a slow attack. The LFO won't kick in until it reaches that full attack point. So all right, sick. Let me also turn this guy off for this, and this is probably gonna be a little bit louder now. Yeah, there we go. All right, I hope that wasn't all a little bit too quiet for everyone, but cool. So yeah, that is classic mode. Is always going to revert to these settings. The filter and the LFO still affect it in one shot as well. However, the amplitude envelope does not. So at that point with the one shot, it's just gonna, you just hit the key, it'll play through the entire sample. Pretty self-explanatory. Everything else still affects it, like in this case the LFO, the attack, and everything, the filter, LFO gone. Don't forget you have these controls down here. By default, this may actually depend a little bit on your settings and your preferences. You can warp these samples. So since the last tutorial was all about, we kind of covered what warping samples does and how to use that. In this, you can warp the sample if you want to. For things like loops, if you have any like sort of rhythmic loop or something, you definitely might want to warp that. For one shots, generally speaking, I leave warp off a lot. However, if you're playing across a big range, remember when you play if warp is off and you play a higher note, it's going to play through that sample much quicker because it has to play, a higher frequency. So if you do warp it, you will get some of those warping artifacts, which again, maybe you want. There's plenty of times where I look for those. But the main point is that it'll play the same length of the sample every time. So yep, there you go. And you can also shorten it or anything like that as well. If you want to make it longer. All right, cool. Let's cover slice mode. For this, I actually have something else pulled up. Where is it? Yeah, right here. Okay, cool. So this is just like a drum loop I found. Slice mode gives you zones. It'll break your sample into separate zones. And how the computer tells what those zones are is kind of up to you. So you have basically you can slice it by transients, which is what it's on by default, by beat, or by region, or just manually. You can just draw in your own zones. What that does is it assigns each zone as sort of a one-shot sample that you play, each zone gets its own key. So in this case, we'll start with transients. So, and by the way, it's a one shot or just a classic mode essentially, which is gate. So trigger is the one shot, gate is the classic where you take your hand off and it's gonna revert to your actually, you know what, slice, let's see, classic gives you the ADSR envelope, slice is not, so probably just is a real gate where like when you take your finger off the key, it just stops playing. So we're gonna go with trigger for now. Slice by transient. The sensitivity is how low the threshold is essentially. So it'll pick up really quiet, like small transients, and still assign a zone to that. So what this looks like in practice is, oh, let me arm this guy. So for instance, here we have that. So this little second one right here and this one, see how that's basically like white noise. And by the way, you can, if it's a little magnifying glass, you can just pull to zoom in, but command on a Mac and scroll, or control on a PC and scroll up or down also works on here, same as it does in here. And shift, left, right, shift, scroll, left, right. That's the same on PC and Mac, and same thing here. So I use that a lot to navigate these bigger samples like this. So the problem here is with 100% sensitivity, it actually picks up some of this like noise as its own zone, which maybe you want. If you don't want that, pull the sensitivity down a little bit, and you'll see that now it kind of raises the threshold, so it's only going to pick up bigger, louder transients. So now I'm just hitting like, the next keys in a row. So cool. Pretty self-explanatory. The different cool ways you can use this, like if you throw on, let me just solo this, and if you get like a metronome going. There we go. Okay. Anyway, I'm not the best finger drummer. You get the idea. Yeah, pull down the transients if you want to even pull that down more. And what you're going to get from that is, again, because it's on trigger, it's going to play all the way through the next zone. So if I hit something like this, or let's find one. Yep. So that's just one key, because that is the whole zone. At any time, if you want to move these around, you can just grab them and move them. If you want to get rid of one, double click it. If you want to add one in, just double click anywhere on there, and you'll get kind of one of these gray guys to put wherever you want. And that will still, I know it's kind of confusing because there's these other gray ones that are, if you actually see a little darker gray, those are just showing you the ones that the computer put in, but that are deactivated because of the sensitivity. If you draw on your own, you're going to get, let's see, where, if I pull out here, you're going to get one that you can move around that is in between those zones. So, and it'll actually assign that to a key as well. So, slice by beat. This is pretty self-explanatory. This is just, and again, is this warp right now? I don't think this is warp. So if you warp it, it'll be more on time. But in general, actually, I think that, a quarter, whether it's warp or not, this quarter is always going to be linked to what's up here. So for rhythmic stuff, sometimes this can be cool if the pattern is very like, quarter notes or eighth notes or something like that. You can get some really cool stuff in like vocal chops if you have like a vocal loop or something like that as well. Actually, I pulled in a couple things here that we can look at as well. So like this is in slice mode.
This is a fucking banger, fucking banger.
So great. I'm actually not sure if that's going to violate some sort of YouTube policy because I just did that. So we'll see. Hope I don't get flagged on my first couple of videos here. Yeah, I got this guy here too. Let's see here. So see that first zone is kind of not where I want it, so I can just pull this guy back, and now that'll become the first zone there.
Beat is
I'm not gonna play the rest because now I'm kind of worried about the YouTube infringements. But what else did I pull in here? So you can do a lot of fun stuff. Take loops, pick them apart. If you are like a finger drummer or someone that's got like a you know, some sort of a Kai or something like that, you can also bang out lots of cool little like vocal chops and stuff like that. If you take an acapella of a hip hop song or something like that, this is a prime way to kind of take that acapella and grab certain pieces of it that you can just kind of play out rhythmically to whatever drum beat you have. You know, like. Cool. Anyway, that about sums that up. Simpler is, albeit pretty simple. That's essentially everything you got here. So now we're gonna move on to sampler. Since there's a lot of overlap between the concepts, I shouldn't need to spend that long on this. Sampler is an incredible tool. You'll notice you have a few more tabs up here than you do in Simpler, where you just essentially have sample and controls with the filter, LFO, and pitch and amp envelope. Here you have a few. So first off, zones. We're not going to cover zones in this. Don't worry about it for right now. That gets into multi-sampling, which you can do some really cool stuff with, but I'm definitely going to cover in a future sound design tutorial or something like that, or creating your own multi-sample instruments down the road. So sample, this is just shows you the sample. When you click on any of these, it's going to move off it. So if you want to see the sample or change these start and end points, by the way, that's something I didn't cover in the in Simpler. In sample, you always, like, let's say you're on classic mode, or let's go to this first one, like the jazz guitar here. You can always change where this playhead starts at, and you can also change where the end is, and then none of that stuff will even be in range. So like if you're in one shot and it's like that, you know, and you play this, it's just gonna play. Let me actually pull that over. Yeah, it's just gonna play that right there. So if you just want like a little, you know, you could do this obviously with like a really quick amp envelope. Where is that pitch envelope? Amp envelope, amp pitch. Where do we got that here? Cool. Well, I'm just gonna. Oh, because we're in one shot, obviously. Yep. So classic. You could do that right here. By make a little stab just with this guy. But if you wanted to, you could leave this and literally just make like a. So anyway, going back to sampler really quick. Yeah, you got your playheads. That is literally all you get on this sample tab. Well, and all of this stuff down here, which we'll get into. Pitch, you have an FM oscillator, which I'll get into in a second. Probably not for this guitar. You might be able to get some cool stuff out of it. And you have a pitch envelope. So pitch and os just means well, you get FM and AM. So we'll cover this in a sec. Leave those off for now. Filter, you have your filter envelope, and then your global tab. This is like your global section right here. This is going to give you everything like voices, give you like velocity sensitivities, your main amp envelope, your overall master volume for this. If you want to loop your amp envelope at all that good stuff. Modulation gives you 3 LFOs and an auxiliary input. The auxiliary input is basically you can take, you know what, I'm going to get into that when I actually cover this tab. So we're going to start kind of from sample, and we'll just run through everything really quick, and I'll show you a couple cool ways to use it that hopefully gives you some inspiration. So in this main tab here, you have the option to reverse it. That'll just play. Whoop, let's see, I got to pull this back down. It'll just literally play it in reverse. Pretty self-explanatory. Snap is, what is snap actually? You know, I got to pull this up. Enabling snap. Oh, let's see. Enabling snap will make the start and end point snap to the waveform 0 crossing, reducing the likelihood of clicks. So, okay, so with snap on, that just means that, you know, you have a wave. If I zoom in here, there's a 0 crossing point. So with snap on, you'll see that the start and end points, it's already on a 0, so it doesn't really matter. If I put this here, You see how it like won't go anywhere? If I turn snap off, I can kind of move it wherever I want. Snap means that it will always go to a 0 crossing point, which means that you won't get any clicks when when it starts or ends. So keep snap on if you want that. For the most part, you can also just keep I honestly never use snap, hence me having to just look up what that did. And the way I avoid those is just pulling the attack out a little bit, same as I would in like operator or anything else that has an amp envelope where you don't want like a 0 millisecond attack. All right, cool. So moving on. I mentioned earlier how, let's say I wanted to pull this E flat note instead of a C note. C is really easy, by the way. If you're ever pulling a C note, you can essentially just start playing. We pull a tuner as well for that. Whoop. So the C note. It's already lined up, really easy. I mentioned how there were different ways to make a different note rooted so that it matches all of your keys. In Sampler, you have to manually transpose it. So like, if you have a note that is a couple notes up from C, you just need to count the notes down and detune it essentially. This, you're actually setting a root note. So it's a little bit easier to figure out. This is an E flat note. So I literally just pull it up to D sharp, E flat, same thing. Cool. Perfect. So one thing that's cool with this is, yeah, I mean, anything that you pull in, you can figure that out super, super easily. Sample start that's just another way to affect this playhead here. If you move that, it's the same thing. Sample end, same thing there. Volume, self-explanatory. Panning. Your sustain mode. It's just going to play, like, let's say I pull this right here and I play a note. It's just going to play there and end. Just like how I explained in the actual sampling with actual audio samplers rather than in sampler, these kind of work the same way. So if I pull this like that, you see how this little loop section gets created now, and you can pull this wherever you want, by the way. And it'll just keep repeating over from the beginning. Now, if you do it this, it's just going to go back and forth. Now you'll notice there is a little bit of a click each time it switches direction. You can minimize that by using this crossfade section right here. How much of a crossfade you want just depends on taste. So in this case, I get kind of like a nice, like fully sustaining note by doing that. Now I can kind of sustain it infinitely. That is pretty cool. Okay, so moving on from here, let's see, is there anything else? I mean, you have your normal detuning stuff. Yeah, I don't really think there's much else I need to cover here. Release mode this is sort of like that oh, let's see. Release mode. You know what? I'm not even gonna go into release mode because I don't use this stuff, so I'm not gonna cover every single button on here. Just make sure and like use, the little info section over here, and it'll tell you what they do. So yeah, sounds good. Moving on from here. Pitch and oscillator. I'm going to pull this back out. Actually, I'll leave it as a sustain. I'm going to pull it out a little bit. All right, cool. Well, whatever. I'll just leave that as is. I'm actually just gonna go forward. All right. So your pitch envelope, again at this point should be pretty self-explanatory. You have all your your ADSR envelope over here. Ooh, I want to bring my decay out. So you can always get some cool stuff there. Your oscillator. One thing that is super, super, super cool about Sampler in particular is the ability to FM any signal that you want. So if you take a recording of your voice or another synth that you've already created, and I'm definitely gonna get into resampling in my next series of videos, you can just FM anything you want, any, sort of basic shape. So you have your type over here. If you want to route a sine wave, saw wave, square wave, triangle wave, etc. through it, you can. By default, the decay is on 30 seconds. You bring it up to 60, which essentially just gives you like a seemingly infinite amount of time. So if I play a note and I pull this up, pull the chorus up. So you can definitely use this as an envelope, and just kind of have something like this with like a really quick decay, maybe like. Personally, I do use it like that sometimes, especially in rack building, and we'll definitely get into racks pretty much in the next like 2 or 3 tutorials in the sound design series. How I use this a lot is I actually just keep this up. I keep my decay at 60 seconds, and I just automate everything. So like as I'm playing stuff, and sometimes I'll automate the chorus as well. And you can get some really, really cool effects that way. The fine tuning, already gets kind of like weird. You can get kind of warbly. You get some really weird detuned stuff there. AM is amp modulation. And honestly, I'm not the expert on amp modulation. So I'm not really going to cover that. Let's see. I think that's just literally just running the signal through. Yeah. So a little bit more basic form of modulation. And again, you have all these different basic shapes here. So if you want to AM or FM with like a square wave. Ooh, yeah, that's getting spicy. But you can see how quickly I took this basic guitar note, and I'm getting some really cool, weird sounds out of it. So that is really the takeaway here. Filter, global. I'm not going to cover this. It's a filter. At this point, you know how it works. If you've watched these tutorials, your filter envelope here, again, I will stress, do not forget to put the amount up. I've seen so many people get frustrated when they can't figure out that little piece. Also, pay attention to this. The key tracking, the pitch of the, it says right here on the side here, the cutoff frequency is determined or influenced by the pitch of incoming MIDI notes. Meaning, personally, I like to always have this at 0. 0 means that this filter will just act how a filter is supposed to. Like, however I play this. Let me put this off. If you have this up at 100, well, in this case, all right, this is a pretty perfect example. All right, so in this case, you see how over here I have frequencies that are hitting all the way up to like, 4K. Over here, this filter is cut off below that. So what the key at 100% means is that the filter cutoff will actually kind of move and adjust as you play in different sections of your keys. So if you are playing like a full range and you want your filter envelope to do something that kind of sounds the same whether you're playing a higher note or a lower note, then you might want to keep the key on. But it will make it sort of move around and you can't see it as it's moving. So it can definitely be confusing or sort of frustrating sometimes if you forget that it's on. The key tracking is on at 100%, and you're wondering why it's not doing exactly what it shows you that it should be doing. It's because the key tracking, most likely. So I always leave this at 0. I think by default it comes on at 100. I don't know why they did it like that, but you can always save stuff as default presets when you get everything how you want it. So in this case, if it's at 0, then whatever is showing here on the filter with the resonance and frequency and slope and everything is going to be what you get. Cool. Modulation. All right, aux. Let's see. I really don't use the aux envelope over here. But this is just, it just gives you an envelope that I guess you can route to anything you want. So that is pretty cool. You have all of the parameters in this entire device in all of sampler right here, and you can route an A and a B to this envelope here. Yeah, pretty cool. LFO 1, 2, 3 is the same as the LFO in simpler. You just get 3 of them now, so you can do a lot of cool stuff with that. This one gives you the same 4 controls as are in simpler, and then with 2 and 3, you get to assign them to any thing that you want in here. So you can definitely get really creative with that. So in this case, you know, I mean, yeah, you get it. It's an LFO. Get creative with it. Route it to different stuff. See how it starts affecting stuff. Let me take this off, actually. And let's see, do I need to do anything special here? Yeah, key also has some influence on that, like how much the in this case it'll influence the LFO's rate. But yeah, if I pull this up, let's see. All right, pretty cool. And then MIDI. This is important for a lot of things. If you want your mod wheel to affect something in particular, if you want the velocity on your velocity sensitive MIDI controller, or you want to just draw in the velocities and have that affect certain things, you can make the velocity affect anything you want. Volume is like, you know, the most basic, but you can make it affect the filter frequency or the morph or anything that you want in there. Make sure that when you do this, like in one of the tutorials, it'll be in the next 1 or 2 where I show, actually, you know what, I'll tease a little bit of it here, I guess, maybe, but it'll be more covered in one of the next couple tutorials where I change the sample offset based on the velocity, and I link a velocity device to a knob so that essentially you can move a knob on your keyboard or, you know, put an LFO and automate that, randomize it if you want, and have the sample offset, like the playhead, start from different places in the clip. So anything that you want to do like that, make sure that once you, like in that case, sample offset, choose it, make sure and set the amount up to 100 or anywhere in between. Usually I just do 100 if that's the effect that I want. Perfect. And then this is also where you'll get your MIDI pitch bend range. You can see right here it has pitch bend. So I always set this to 12 or 24. Cool. Yeah, that is about it, honestly. Get weird with this, have some fun. I will show you some pretty cool ways to take some bass resamples. Like if you download any you know, experimental bass sound packs and they have some single note samples. Let's go into my own thing here. Let's see, basses. Let's see. All right, that'll do. So that is in E flat. So, oh, we're already there in the root note. So. All right, very cool. All right, so a couple things. I have this pitch on right here. I'm gonna take the pitch envelope off. This oscillator, of course, all the way up. This is a perfect example though, and I have the square, so I'm putting on a sign. Take this modulation off, so it's just the actual thing. So you can see I can get some pretty gnarly sounds with some pre-existing bass patches. This is something that, you know, I don't want to go too far in. I'll probably just cut that here because I'm really excited to dive into my series of different sound design tutorials where I will cover using bass resampling to get some really, really cool effects. So I'm not going to go that far into it. Hopefully by the time you see this video, the first like 10 or so will already be out. So you can hop right into those if you feel like it. As always, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, whatever people do on YouTube. And yeah, if there are specific videos you want to see, drop them in the comments as well. Thanks for bearing with me here while I figure out my rhythm for these videos. And yeah, I will see you on the next one.